So most people pursue the CFA credential, and they go to work in an industry or a big bank or a big financial institution. Very few people go to work as an entrepreneur, right? And that's something that you've done. That's something that I'm considering. And I think people would be interested in maybe hearing about the topic of like, how can you leverage, let's say, sort of the prestige or stature or confidence that having the CFA um, gives you by having that behind your name, and maybe leverage that to make your own business or the opportunities out there that people just really aren't taking advantage of. And I know you have some thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, so when it comes with to money and people's money, um, there's a certain level of trust that's required for people to hand over their money, and that trust can usually be embedded in a name like Goldman Sachs or J.P. Morgan,
Mhm.
or it's embedded in a credential, whether you're a Wharton graduate, whether you have the CFA charter, things like that. So, it has an impact on other people. The credential that you have, the school that you graduate from, the firm that you work for, the history that you've had. Even if you say, I was at Goldman Sachs for 8 years in this capacity, I have a CFA now, I'm out on my own. It adds credibility to who you are, and that's definitely required in the field of finance. the Almost all finance departments at all schools train you for an institutional role in some capacity. Even the
Mhm.
CFA is very heavily institutional. That you're
Mhm.
going to go and take a job, but it doesn't really do much in terms of how you can create your own job. You don't have to be a job taker; you can be a job maker. It does provide you with a foundation of which to be your own boss, your own
Mhm.
entrepreneur, right? Anybody who starts a business is going to have to invest money in their business, and then they hope to get a return on the capital that they invested. Well, your capital is your portfolio, and it is a business like any other business. You have to have different types of products in your portfolio. You have to have those that generate the income, low margin, but generates a steady income. You've got certain specialty products, and you can create income factories in your portfolio. It's not difficult to do. That's beyond, to create an income factory beyond what dividends or interest would provide. And this is the power of options, that it allows you to do that at a very low risk, especially when you combine an allocation factory with an income factory. You can generate 20-22% per year with a low level of risk. I've had fantastic Sharpe ratios. Now, I know what some people out there are probably saying. If you're using options, the Sharpe ratio is not like, of course your Sharpe ratio is going to look great. Doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's still a great Sharpe ratio. It still lowers my portfolio volatility and increases the return. But once you show people how to do these things, um, it is a possibility to be your own boss. Is why should I go take a job? I encourage everybody, do your tour of duty out there in the real world, but think about being your own person at some point and being your own boss. If you have a good portfolio, a good capital base, you can generate an income. Not only that, if you have the charter, you have the credential, you have that credibility, be your own fund. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Start attracting investment with accredited investors. There's a lot of money out there. You would not believe how much money there is out there that needs to find a home. It has to
Mhm.
perform. The idea of having 30 or 40 million dollars in a bank account is just not something that happens. It'll underperform life by 2 to 3% every year because of inflation. There's plenty of people with plenty of money that has to find a home. It has to find a home. That
Mhm.
if you can demonstrate a good track record, and you have some good strategies, you can build your own assets under management. You can build your own fund. You don't have to take a job. So I find that there's not enough of the entrepreneurial pathway that's being taught in finance schools for finance. And I think the CFAI could do quite well if it infused some of its level 3 content, which is heavily in portfolio management, infused some of that with how would you do it for a retail sized portfolio. You're
Mm-hmm.
not an institution with $800 million anymore. You're a retail investor with 2.5 million. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what do? How do you size a portfolio? How do you scale it? What changes when you go down to that level? I think if they had a small little section at level 3 for that, I think it probably could, in people's mind, give them the idea that this is something that is viable. I can open a restaurant or I can open a
Mm-hmm.
fund. It's the same thing.
I think it, yeah, and I think it's absolutely viable to start your own business, especially if you have the CFA. I think the tough part is that it takes a long time and there's a ton of sacrifice up front that you don't really get any sort of immediate gratification or benefit from. And that's probably what puts people off.
That is the nature of all success. That is the front end of all success. That is exactly what is required. Is Listen, when an employer hires you, as I said before, as a J curve, in the first couple of years, you're going to draw more resources than you return. Hope is down the road you return more than you draw. Well, to create your own business, yes, there's a J curve. You're going to sacrifice a lot in those first few years, but that's the price of success.